We just finished our 10-night Southern Caribbean Panama Canal cruise on Holland America's Eurodam. You'll want to stay tuned for this very mixed review. Find out why some things just didn't live up to our expectations. Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of my review of Holland American Line's Eurodam on our 10-night Southern Caribbean and Panama Canal cruise. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, follow this link right here, and then I'll have a link at the end of that video to bring you right back for part 2. If you are new here, my name's Doug, and this is Seymour Seas, your cruise tips and planning channel, where I hope to help you and your family pick, plan, and enjoy your next cruise vacation. If you do find this video helpful in any way, please do give it that thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. This is part 2 of a 2-part review of Holland America's Eurodam. We have already covered the ship design and its condition, the stateroom we had, which was a signature suite on this sailing, as well as all of the entertainment options. Today, using Doug's Ship Score, we're going to continue with the ports of call for itinerary. We're going to talk about the plates, which is the food on board, and we're also going to be talking about the service. So let's get started with that next category. Let's move on now to I for itinerary. These are the ports of call and the excursions. We had several stops on this 10-night cruise, and the first of which was Moon Cay. This is a great private island. It's won many, many awards throughout the years, and we've been there several times. This is a tender port. Moon Cay does not have a pier like many of the other newer private islands. However, it's still a great place to visit. We have been there, and we normally get a private cabana. This time we wanted to do something a little different. So as the excursions were finally populated on the Holland America website, only about a week before our embarkation, we were able to see excursions and snag the horseback riding. And it was a great excursion. We were able to do the horseback riding through their ranch area, and then they changed the saddles and we swam in the ocean with the horses dragging us along. It was a little bit more difficult than you might think in the ocean to stay on that horse, but it was a really great excursion. Moon Cay, we had 2 ships in port that day, 2 Holland America ships, so the beach was very, very crowded. I did meet with one of my subscribers, Kathleen, who did get one of the largest, most glamorous cabanas on the island, and I'm going to have a separate review of that excursion, but she and her family had an absolutely fantastic time. So the next day was a sea day. This is where we learned that our itinerary was going to change up a little bit. We were supposed to arrive in Aruba the next afternoon and then Curacao the next day. However, due to the fact that the new Statendam that was in Moon Cay with us had propulsion issues, it was going to Aruba first, and so we had to switch our days. This made it very, very difficult for us based on the fact that all of the excursions that were booked were going to have to be flipped as well. Not just the days, but also the times. So we were supposed to be in Aruba in the afternoon, and we were going to be in Curacao in the morning. This had to change, so we were in Curacao in the afternoon and then Aruba the next day in the morning. So our afternoon excursions had to be changed to the morning and vice versa. So everybody was a little bit on edge to see whether or not they were going to have their chosen excursions. And long story short, it all worked out, and most everyone was able to switch their excursions without any issue. I think Holland America handled this very, very well, actually. On our way to Curacao, we did arrive in the afternoon around 2 p.m. and we were able to go right out to our excursion, which was a beach visit, historical drive through historical Curacao, as well as going to explore some caves. The cave was the highlight of this port. Curacao is a beautiful port, but we didn't really have any time to walk around unless we wanted to go out in the evening, which we decided not to. And the beach that they went to was supposed to be at the end of our excursion. Remember, we were supposed to be doing this in the morning, so the beach would have been a great way to end the day. However, in this situation, we had to reverse it, so we started at the beach, which was a little bit awkward and a little bit boring. The beach was beautiful. The caves were fantastic. They were a highlight of this excursion. And then we drove through the downtown for just a little while before they brought us back to the ship. Early the next morning, we arrived in Aruba, where we had a Segway and beach excursion planned. So we had a fantastic time. It was a small bus ride over to the Segway practice area where I took a major spill and crashed when I was practicing. These aren't as easy as they look, but once everybody got the hang of it, we were off and took a tour down the beach, up a hill to a lighthouse, and had a break there. And then we were dropped off at a local beach that was quite nice. The water was beautiful. They had pelicans doing dives into the water right next to you, grabbing their lunch. And it was really a nice visit. And we got out of there with just a few scrapes and bruises, but we had a wonderful time in Aruba. They did take us back to the ship, where we were able to grab a light lunch. And then we went out in Aruba, in the downtown port area, which is basically your Diamonds International. There's a few hotels. There's a lot of different tourist shops, but it's a beautiful downtown area. It felt very, very safe, and I would love to go back there and spend some more time. After Aruba, we had another sea day on our way to Panama, where we arrived very, very early in the morning at about 5:30. At 6 a.m., they announced that we were starting to head towards the first lock. The pilot was on board, so we went up on the bow of the ship, as most everyone else did, and then I realized that on deck 5 that was the true bow, but they also had outside areas on deck 6 and 7, so I went up one level and had a fantastic vantage point to go through the canal. I will be doing a full canal video so you can see that we went through the first 3 locks and then came back through the same locks in the same day. It was absolutely fantastic experience. So glad that we did it. John got a lot of video from our balcony. I was out on the upper decks, and can't stress it enough. This was the highlight of our trip, and I will provide you a full video review of the Panama Canal. Now, when we went through the locks in the afternoon, awaiting those that got off in the lake to do additional excursions, we docked in Colón, Panama, and we had received notices from the cruise director and the staff on board that basically told us to be careful not to wear any expensive jewelry out, because it is a very difficult port and there is a lot of crime reported if you go too far away from the ship. So we just decided to stay on board, and I don't think that we missed all that much based on some of the comments of some of the people that I talked to that went off the ship. After Panama, the next day we arrived in Costa Rica. Now, this was a very, very industrial port, and we understand that we were sent to an alternative port because of ship congestion. We were not in a very nice part of town, apparently, and so there was little talk about anyone getting off the ship and going downtown because it looked pretty impoverished and there wasn't a lot to do. The buses were all lined up very, very early in the morning. We had an excursion planned that was a small group excursion, so we got on one of the smaller buses and we headed to one of the national parks. This was about an hour-and-a-half drive, so it was a little long of a bus ride. However, it was a hazy day. This was a rainforest, and we were to tour two of the national forests as well as a macaw sanctuary. So we arrived at the macaw sanctuary first due to the fact, again, they had to rearrange the excursions based on the times, but we were able to see the macaws. It was a really great experience. They do a wonderful job at this particular sanctuary in bringing the macaw back. In that area, they were almost extinct at one point in time. So after that, we did go to one of the national rainforests, and we walked on a wooden bridge path. It was raining in the rainforest, and there were a lot of mosquitoes. Good thing we brought our bug repellent. And then we boarded the bus again, went to the other side of that park that had a beach associated with it. And there we were able to see a few of the monkeys as well. There were a couple sloths that people spotted. Then we boarded the bus, heading back towards the ship where we stopped, and they served us a lunch of rice and beans with some chicken as well as some fried plantains. All in all, it was a pretty good day. Not as exciting as we wished it would have been with more of the wildlife. There are other excursions available where there are more interactive wildlife experiences, such as the Sky Tram that goes over the rainforest. We did talk to some people that went on that, and they said they saw a ton of wildlife, and it was not that long of a drive. So something to consider when doing your research for Costa Rica. We had 2 beautiful sea days remaining on our cruise before we went back to Fort Lauderdale. So for itinerary, I'm going to give for the ports of call and excursions for this sailing 3.5 stars. It's mostly because of some of the lack of activities on the sea days, as well as the switch around of Curacao and Aruba really kind of screwed up everybody's time frames for their excursions. But all in all, we had some really nice ports. We're glad we did it. And of course, the Panama Canal was the highlight for the ports. So moving on to P for plates. This is the food and the dining on board. This has to be the category that we were most disappointed in for this Holland America Eurodam sailing. The main dining room food was not up to par. The service was very, very slow. Our main waiter was not very attentive. They did allow John to pre-order meals the night before, which was very nice, and they were very accommodating, or at least tried to be accommodating for the different meals. However, we found the selection very, very limited and very non-classic, and there wasn't very many healthy options to choose from. We felt the quality of the food was quite below average, as well as the portion sizes were very, very small. Probably some of the smallest portion sizes we've had on any cruise to date. We actually decided to upgrade a few of the entrees from the main dining room to a steak from the Pinnacle Grill. They only served steak one night, and so the other options were not really that appealing to us from the main menu. All of the classic items were no longer listed. You don't have a shrimp cocktail. You do not have escargot. You do not have any of the standard classic features similar to the move that Royal Caribbean has done. The specialty dining was very good. However, the service on our first night at Pinnacle Grill was also very, very slow, and the food was mediocre. We went to Pinnacle 3 different times, and each time the steaks were average. They were a little tough, none were very tender, and the service did improve on the last 2 nights. Tamarin was probably the best experience we had in dining, and we were able to make sure that John ordered the night before. They were very, very accommodating. The meal was fantastic. The service was really, really great, and we had heard from most people that visited Tamarin on this particular sailing that was also one of their best experiences. Now, the buffet on board had to be the most disappointing. The food quality was very low. The selections did not have much of a variety. They served the same things every day. The carvery station was a very overcooked dry chicken, and sometimes they would have a very overcooked dry pork there as well. There was a salad station where they made a special salad for you. That same area was an omelet station in the morning. There was one small little area that did do eggs Benedict in the morning, but throughout the entire buffet for breakfast, it was just your standard scrambled eggs, sausage, bacon, grilled tomatoes, and they did have a wide variety of breads available. They did have pre-made sandwiches for grab and go for lunch, and they also had a taco station, and then some of the very bland pre-made salads, and again, limited selection, and the lines were very, very long. It is not a station-oriented buffet. It is get in a line, and when you get up to that item, you ask for it, they serve it to you. So you've got a number of plate situation going on there as well. And it just was not that great of an experience in the buffet for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Now, one bright spot was the dive-in burger restaurant venue, which is in the midship pool area. They did burgers to order, and the fries were very, very good. And we ate there on most of the sea days, or if we were on the ship for lunch, we would go to dive in due to the fact that it was quick and we could make sure that it was made to our specifications. The pizza on the aft pool deck, I did not care for. The crust seemed a little doughy and not completely cooked. Now, one of the great things that you can do on the Holland American Navigator app is you can pre-order your dive-in burger as well as a full pizza prior to going up to the counter, so they buzz it when it's ready and then you can go pick it up. But the pizza was not that good. The burgers from Dive In were very good. So for dining, unfortunately, I'm going to have to give Eurodam only 2 stars for dining. The service in the dining rooms, as well as the low quality food and the very low quality food in the buffet, really 2 stars is pretty generous. So 2 stars for food. So let's now move on to the last category, which is service. Now, service is anything from your dining service to your room steward, the internet, the Holland America app, as well as all of the other crew members that attempt to make your cruise an enjoyable one. So let's start with dining service. Our dining service in the main dining room, as I've previously mentioned, was not the best. He was very slow. The assistant waiter, she took care of us most of the time. He was pretty much unavailable and did not come by our table very often. Now, this is extremely surprising for a head waiter in the main dining room. Now, for the specialty restaurants, the service on our first night at Pinnacle Grill was very slow and the server was not very attentive either. However, the other 2 times that we went to Pinnacle Grill, the service was very, very good. I will say that in all dining venues, John was able to pre-order his main entree and sides the night before, dealing with his food sensitivity. Our room steward, August, was absolutely great. He made sure that the room was serviced when we were not there, and he did this very, very well. He brought us ice twice a day as we requested, and he was just a delight through the entire 10-night sailing. The internet service wasn't too bad. It was a little spotty. John had some issues logging in inside the cabin on his laptop, but throughout the ship it seemed to be pretty good. One very nice thing is that we were able to upgrade on day 1 using onboard credit to the premium internet for only $50. So that's pretty good for upgrading to the premium internet on a 10-night sailing. Now, the Holland America app was very, very good. There is a chat feature that we didn't use based on the fact that we could just text each other through the internet, and so we just used that feature. However, updating your statement, being able to order from the pizza place or dive in, as well as seeing everything that's going on during the day on the ship and being able to add that to your own personal calendar and itinerary was extremely nice. And I thought that the app was very, very handy many, many times. Now, the bar staff on board, it seemed to be very, very efficient, very quick. Most of the pools had individual crew members walking around taking orders, and sometimes that was actually faster than staying at the bar. They did have 2 to 3 bartenders at each of the bars, and I found that the service was very, very quick and efficient. Now, the one thing that I mentioned earlier was all of the maintenance that was going on throughout the cruise, the entire 10 days, specifically the outer railings that were being sanded, primed, and painted. This seemed to go on forever, and it ended up being quite annoying, at least to us. There was one service faux pas in the photo department. We had purchased a 5-photo package because some of the photos that we had taken were actually pretty good. And we also purchased a thumb drive, USB thumb drive of the time lapse going through the Panama Canal. Now, you were supposed to pick this up 8 o'clock the last night. So after 8, I stopped by the photo studio and they had my packet ready and they had a thumb drive taped to the front of that packet and told me that was the time-lapse photography. Upon getting home, I put the thumb drive in, waiting to see that time-lapse footage of the Panama Canal, and it was only 5 digital copies of the photos that we purchased. So I have been in touch with Holland America, and they will be sending me that thumb drive. So at first I was quite upset, but I was able to get a hold of the correct people through chat, and they have contacted me, and they will be sending me that time-lapse photography. So for the service category, I'm going to give Eurodam 3.5 stars. This is mostly because of the ongoing maintenance and some of the slow service in the dining room. This brings us to the final ship score. So my thoughts on this sailing is that it was a nice cruise. However, it was a little bit boring with the lack of activities on board during the sea days, as well as the lack of choice for the entertainment. The stateroom was nice. We loved the size. However, the mold odor coming out of the bathtub was a little annoying. The maintenance going on throughout the ship with the strong smell of paint was also something that we did notice quite a bit. The food and dining on board was below average. The main dining room entrees were not very good. Portions were small. The specialty dining was okay, but not worth the added charge. And the buffet had very, very low quality items to choose from. The demographic on this particular sailing was also much, much older than us, and the ship seemed to be very, very crowded and difficult to get around from one end to the other. Now, Holland America does normally attract an older demographic. However, I think a lot of the activities and entertainment was targeted towards the much older demographic, and it just didn't seem to fit with the way that we like to cruise. So for final ship score, I'm giving Holland America Line's Eurodam 10-night Southern Caribbean Panama Canal cruise 3.1 stars. This is somewhat of a brutal review of this particular sailing. However, as I stated in part 1, we really wanted to love this cruise. Now the question, will we sail Holland America again? I have to say, no. At least not right now. We may come back at a later date. However, we will be going back to other cruise lines that have a much more active itinerary and target to a younger demographic. So that is part 2 of my review of Holland America Line's Eurodam. If you did find this video helpful in any way, please do give it that thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you'd like to go back and see part 1 of this review, make sure that you follow this link right here. Thanks so much, everybody, and I'll see you again soon.